I spent $18,000 planning the perfect family vacation to Maui, 10 days of sunshine, ocean views, and memories I thought we'd cherish forever. But at the airport, suitcase in hand and heart full of excitement, my son turned to me and said, "Dad, I forgot to buy you a ticket. You should head back home." Just like that. No apology. No explanation. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. It was a betrayal. A carefully orchestrated plan to leave me behind like unwanted luggage. But what my family didn't know was that 3 weeks later they'd return from paradise to find me standing at the gate with someone who would change their lives forever. Justice doesn't always knock it sometimes. Waits quietly, patiently, until it's ready to strike. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments below. This story isn't just about betrayal, it's about boundaries. It's about a man who learned too late that kindness without limits becomes currency for manipulation. But it's also a story of clarity, strength, and an ending that no one, least of all my son, ever saw coming. What would you do if the people closest to you saw your generosity not as love, but as leverage? If the very ones you supported for years turned around and cut you out, not by accident, but by design? That was my reality. But I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't follow them. Instead, I did something better. Much better. So grab a coffee, settle in, and listen closely, because by the end of this story, you'll understand why the man they tried to discard came back with more than just a suitcase. He came back with power, paperwork, and a plan. The terminal at Portland International buzzed with the usual morning chaos: families herding sleepy children, honeymooners with oversized hats, businessmen on laptops barking into phones. I stood there in the middle of it all, suitcase by my side, a hopeful smile still lingering on my face. My son, Travis, had just dropped a sentence that would carve itself into my memory like a scar. "Dad, I forgot to buy your ticket. You should head back home." At first, I thought he was joking. I waited for the sheepish grin, the playful jab, some clue that this was part of a bad taste prank. But none came. Instead, he stared at the departure board like it had personally betrayed him. No eye contact, no remorse, just to avoidance. "What do you mean you forgot?" I asked, my voice softer than I'd expected. "We've been planning this trip for 3 months. Travis finally glanced at me, eyes darting quickly away again. "Yeah, I know. Things got hectic. Work's been crazy, and coordinating everything with Linda and the kids, it just slipped through the cracks." I reminded him, gently but firmly, that I had transferred $18,000 to his account 6 weeks earlier. His only response was a mumbled, "Thanks again, Dad," and a glance at his watch. That's when I started walking toward the check-in counter, still believing this could be fixed. Maybe he'd made a genuine mistake. Maybe I could buy another ticket on the spot. The woman behind the Hawaiian Airlines counter greeted me with a practiced smile. "I'd like to check what flights you have to Maui today," I said. She asked for my reservation. "Harold Bennett," I told her, suddenly aware of how fast my heart was beating. She typed, paused, frowned slightly. "I'm not seeing a booking under that name. Are you sure it was made with us?" "It should have been," I said. "My son, Travis Bennett, he handled the bookings." Her fingers moved quickly. "Ah. Yes, I see a reservation for Travis Bennett. Party of 4. 2 adults, 2 children, departing at 10:05 a.m. And you're sure there's no Harold Bennett?" "I'm sorry, sir. No." Something inside me started to tilt, like the floor wasn't quite level anymore. I asked if there were any standby options. She shook her head gently. "There's a tech conference in Maui this week. Every seat is sold out. I can look for tomorrow, maybe first class?" I nodded. Price doesn't matter. But even tomorrow was tight. And that's when Travis returned to my side, like he was the one offering consolation. "Dad, let's not make a scene. This isn't going to work." I turned toward him, stunned. "What do you mean it's not going to work? I can catch another flight. I'll meet you there." "No," he said, his voice flat, his eyes still avoiding mine. "You should just go home. We'll call you from the hotel." The last part wasn't just dismissive, it was planned, polished, like he'd rehearsed it. And then he turned and walked toward the security checkpoint without looking back. Just like that, like I was a stranger asking for a favor. I stood there, suitcase tilted, mouth dry, trying to comprehend what had just happened. The agent behind the counter, who'd watched the exchange unfold, leaned forward. "Sir, do you want me to check when that reservation was made?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Please." A few keystrokes later, she told me. "It was booked 6 weeks ago. 4 people. No changes since the original booking." That's when I understood. This wasn't forgetfulness. It wasn't chaos or busyness. It was strategy. They'd decided I wasn't going to Maui, and they'd known it for over a month. That realization hit harder than any turbulence a plane could throw at me. I'd been written out of my own gift. I stepped back from the counter, away from the noise, away from the stares, and let myself feel the full weight of it. Not just the embarrassment, not just the sting of rejection, but the betrayal, the deliberate erasure. I looked at the flight board again. Flight 228, final boarding. Somewhere past that gate, my family, the people I'd helped, supported, and loved for decades, were taking off for a paradise I had funded but was never meant to see. They thought I'd just accept it, go home, be quiet, maybe mumble something at Thanksgiving and move on. But they were wrong. They didn't realize that beneath this cardigan and senior discount was someone who'd spent 45 years navigating billion-dollar construction projects, solving problems, managing risk. They thought kindness meant weakness. They were about to learn otherwise. I stepped outside the terminal into the crisp Portland air, dragging my suitcase behind me like a dead weight. The automatic doors slid closed behind me with a soft whoosh, sealing off the chaos inside and, in a way, sealing off a chapter of my life I hadn't realized was ending. The taxi line stretched longer than I'd expected, but I didn't mind. I welcomed the wait. It gave me time to think. Not just about what had happened, but about why it had happened. About how long it had been happening. The signs had always been there, hadn't they? Subtle at first. Travis insisting he handle the hotel bookings so things don't get confusing. Linda mentioning during a family dinner that maybe Grandpa would be more comfortable staying at a separate hotel just in case the kids get too loud. Ella once said, "Sometimes older folks don't like the beach anyway, right, Grandpa?" Little comments, small adjustments, and I, like the fool I now realized I'd been, nodded along, eager to make things easy, to not be a burden, to be included. The cab driver was a quiet man, maybe in his 50s, wearing a mariner's cap and a jacket that had seen better days. He loaded my suitcase into the trunk without a word. "Where to?" he asked once I settled into the back seat. I hesitated for a second, then said, "Montclair District." As we pulled away from the terminal, I stared out the window, watching the familiar blur of the city I'd called home for decades. "Rough day?" he asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. I gave a humorless chuckle. "You could say that. Ever have your family turn on you?" he snorted. "Buddy, I've got an ex-wife and 3 brothers. They could teach classes." I didn't reply right away. The silence between us stretched comfortably for a few miles. And then I heard myself say it, like I was confessing to a priest. "I gave my son $18,000 for a vacation I wasn't even invited to." He whistled low. "Ouch, that's cold." Cold didn't even begin to cover it. I thought back to all the ways I'd supported Travis over the years. Paid his tuition when he couldn't keep a scholarship, helped him with the down payment on his first home, picked up the tab for his wife's medical bills when she had surgery. Christmases, birthdays, school supplies, violin lessons, soccer camps, dental braces, every gap I filled. Quietly, generously, without conditions. I didn't keep receipts. I kept faith. And somehow over the years that faith had turned into expectation. Not on my part, but on theirs. They came to believe they were entitled to it, that it was my job to give and theirs to take. No questions asked, no gratitude required. As we neared my neighborhood, my phone buzzed. A message from Travis. "Hey, Dad. Sorry again about the mix-up. We'll call when we're settled. Hope you're okay." A mix-up. That's what he was calling it. As if he'd forgotten to bring an extra towel, not excluded his father from a family trip he'd paid for. The driver pulled into my driveway. "That'll be $43.75, he said. I handed him 60. "Keep the change," I murmured. "And thanks for the talk." He nodded. "Whatever you're planning, man, I hope they deserve it." I smiled faintly. They do. My house looked exactly as I'd left it 3 hours earlier. Neat, quiet, waiting for me to be gone for 10 days. But I wasn't the same man who'd locked that front door with anticipation. I wheeled my suitcase across the threshold and shut the door behind me, the sound echoing through the empty hallway like punctuation. This wasn't just disappointment. This was clarity. This was the moment I stopped being the generous old man and started being the man who remembered who he used to be. I walked into my study. Martha's old desk still sat in the corner, polished and tidy, just the way she liked it. The filing cabinets lined up against the wall like silent witnesses to a life of order and care. I opened the drawer labeled Vacations and pulled out the folder I'd marked, Maui Trip, 2025. Inside were the printouts I'd carefully prepared. Hotel brochures, rental car quotes, activity lists for the grandkids, snorkel tour schedules, restaurant reservations, all the little dreams I'd imagined, unfolding on warm beaches with my family beside me. And then I saw the final document, the wire transfer confirmation, $18,000, paid to Travis Bennett, the 12th of April, 2025, 6 weeks ago, the same week he booked the reservation for 4. My eyes landed on the hotel confirmation email he'd forwarded me weeks ago. I read it again, slower this time. Guests: Travis Bennett, Linda Bennett, Liam Bennett, Ella Bennett. No mention of me, no room booked for me, no space at the table, no seat in the car, not even a typo to suggest I was considered. They'd written me out as cleanly as a deleted paragraph. And it wasn't just exclusion, it was betrayal with intent. As I stood there with the paper trembling slightly in my hand, I realized something else. They thought I'd just accept it, that I'd go quietly, that I'd say, "Oh well," and watch from the sidelines. But what they didn't count on was this. I may be 72, but I'm not finished. Not by a long shot. They thought they'd left me behind, but I was already 3 steps ahead. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, though I was, or humiliated, though that too lingered like a bitter aftertaste, but because my mind was alight with a calm, focused clarity I hadn't felt in years. It was the same mental sharpness I used to summon during crisis moments in my engineering days, back when half-finished bridge designs and budget overruns demanded quiet resolve, not emotional reaction. I didn't need revenge. What I needed was control. And now, finally, I had it. The next morning, as sunlight filtered through the kitchen blinds, I brewed a fresh pot of coffee and set my old rotary phone on the table, beside a legal pad and pen. Not my cell phone. No. This moment demanded something with weight, something analog. The past 24 hours had stripped away every illusion I'd been clinging to, and now it was time to start dismantling the world Travis thought he had built with my money. I dialed the number for the Makana Bay Resort in Maui. A young woman with a lilting, friendly voice answered. "Aloha. Thank you for calling Makana Bay Resort. This is Leilani. How can I help you today?" "Good morning, Leilani. I need to cancel a reservation under the name Travis Bennett." There was a brief pause, the kind where people try to be polite while bracing for backlash. "Certainly, sir. May I ask the arrival date?" "Today," I said. 10 nights, 4 guests, 2 adults, 2 children. "Ah, yes, I see it right here. Beautiful ocean view suites, very popular this time of year. Are you sure you'd like to cancel?" "Completely sure," she hesitated. "I do have to inform you, sir, that because this is same-day cancellation, there will be a late penalty fee of $2,700. "That's acceptable," I replied, not even blinking. In the background, I imagined Travis and Linda landing at Kahului Airport, tired but excited, discussing dinner plans and which pool to hit first. I imagined them arriving at the hotel, smiles wide, children buzzing, only to be told, politely and firmly, that no rooms had been reserved. "The reservation has been canceled," Leilani said gently. "Confirmation will be sent to the original booking email." "Thank you," I said. "Just one more thing. When they arrive and ask what happened, please tell them the booking was canceled by the original funding party at 7:42 a.m. Pacific time." She paused, then said with quiet understanding, "Yes, sir. I'll note that clearly." I hung up and stared at the phone for a long moment. That was step 1. Clean, simple, Legal. Effective. I went about the rest of my morning like it was any other. Read the paper, watered the front hedge, refilled the bird feeder. But by the time I returned to the kitchen, my phone was vibrating nonstop calls, texts, voicemails, all from the same Hawaii number. I ignored the first wave, then the second. By the sixth call, I sat down with my coffee and opened the messages, scrolling through them like chapters in a desperate novella. 11:48 a.m. Hawaii time. Dad, call me. Something's wrong with the hotel. Please call. 12:15 p.m. They say the rooms were canceled. What's going on? 1:05 p.m. Dad, we're sitting in the lobby with 2 crying kids and no place to stay. This isn't funny. Please respond. 2:40 p.m. This is serious, Dad. Ella is exhausted and Liam is hungry. We're trying to find another hotel, but everything is full. 3:10 p.m. We're stranded. What are you doing? My only reply was silence. And in that silence, a lesson began to take root. Travis had always assumed my support was endless, that forgiveness was a reflex I couldn't help but offer. He never thought I'd walk away. And now, for the first time, he was learning what it felt like to be on the other side of neglect. I poured myself a second cup of coffee and took it into the living room, settling into Martha's old chair by the window, the one with faded arms and creaky joints, the one that had absorbed years of laughter, grief, and late-night conversations. I could almost hear her voice in my head, calm and steady. Sometimes kindness needs teeth, Harold. My phone buzzed again. A voicemail. I played it on speaker, letting the words echo through the room. Dad, Travis's voice was thin, tight with panic. I don't know what you think you're accomplishing, but this has gone too far. We spent the night in the hotel lobby. The kids don't understand. Linda's furious. We have no money left on the credit card and no one else to call. Please fix this, now. That last word now landed like a gavel, as if I owed him a resolution, as if I had broken something that was his. I looked down at the coffee table, where a stack of family photos sat untouched. Christmases, birthdays, 4th of July barbecues me, always in the background, holding the camera, footing the bill. And suddenly, I felt something shift. Not anger, not sadness, just certainty. I picked up the phone and began to dial. Not Travis, not Linda. I called someone else. Someone who could help make the next move permanent. Good morning, Krause and Fairchild. This is Rebecca, came the voice on the line. Hi, Rebecca. This is Harold Bennett. I'd like to schedule a meeting with Mr. Krause. Certainly, Mr. Bennett. What's the subject of the consultation? I smiled, calm and cool. Estate restructuring. It's time for some changes. Benjamin Krause's office hadn't changed in the 10 years since I first sat across from him after Martha passed. Still the same leather chairs, still the smell of pine wood polish and quiet authority. Back then, I was a grieving husband trying to make sense of probate law and joint assets. Today, I was a man on a mission. When he entered the conference room, Benjamin offered the same firm handshake, but paused for a beat as he studied my face. You look irresolute, he said, pulling out his chair. I am, I replied, and I need your help to make sure my son never sees another cent of my estate. He nodded slowly, no questions, no flinching. Tell me everything. So I did. From the moment at the airport to the call with Leilani, the 52 missed calls, the voice messages thick with entitlement, panic, and blame. I handed him my notepad, the one where I'd transcribed Travis's exact words from his last voicemail. You're going to regret this. You can't treat family like this. Actions have consequences, old man. Benjamin read the line twice, then looked up. Well, he said, that's rich. I reached into my folder and laid out the Rest Bank statements, showing 22 years of quiet support. Mortgage payments, hospital bills, car repairs, even the private tutor for Liam last spring. That, I said, tapping the statements, was kindness, and it's been mistaken for weakness. No more. Benjamin leaned back, thoughtful. What you're describing is not only financial exploitation, it's emotional manipulation. You have more than enough grounds to revise your estate with protections against contestation. That's what I want. Ironclad. Bulletproof. I'm not just writing Travis out, I want to ensure he can't challenge it, twist it, or worm his way back in. Understood, Benjamin said, already opening his laptop. Let me walk you through the process. We'll draft a new will, designate alternate beneficiaries, and include a specific clause detailing your decision to disinherit him based on exploitative and threatening behavior. I nodded. And the children? I asked, a little softer now. Liam and Ella? You can establish charitable trusts in their name. It keeps your intent to support children alive, just not under Travis's control. That part mattered to me. I didn't blame the kids. They were collateral damage in a war they didn't start. Over the next 2 hours, we rebuilt the future from the ground up. The new will would allocate $350,000 to the Maui Youth STEM Fund, a poetic gesture, given what had happened. Another $250,000 would go to Oregon State University's engineering school, creating scholarships in Martha's name. The remainder real estate, retirement savings, remaining investments would be divided among local senior services, veterans programs, and community outreach projects that could actually do something meaningful with it. And who will execute the will? Benjamin asked. You, I said. I trust you more than I trust anyone with my name. When we were done, he looked at me and said, You know this isn't just legal. It's final. I met his gaze without hesitation. So was Travis's decision at the airport. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. No more what-ifs. No more imagining myself on a beach chair that was never reserved for me. Just silence, peace, and a sense that something long overdue had finally been set in motion. 3 days later, I returned to Benjamin's office to sign the final documents. Everything was prepared: 2 witnesses, a notary, a video camera to document my competency, every legal safeguard in place. I read every word before I signed, and when I did, I didn't just sign my name. I signed my freedom. As the notary applied her seal, Benjamin handed me a clean, sealed copy of the new will. Keep this in a secure place, he said. The original stays in our firm's vault. And when should I tell Travis? I asked. That's up to you, Benjamin said. But based on what you've told me, it might be best if he learns the truth at a moment he least expects it. I smiled slowly. I was thinking the exact same thing. 1 week later, I stood by the arrivals gate at Portland International. The flight from Maui had just landed. Families began spilling into the terminal, sunburnt, weary, still smelling faintly of ocean air. And then I saw them. Travis, wheeling 2 oversized bags. Linda, her jaw set in that tight line she always got when things didn't go according to plan. Liam and Ella lagging behind, clutching ukuleles and melting pineapple gummies. As they approached, Travis's eyes landed on me, and then slid sideways to the man standing beside me. Benjamin Krause, tailored navy suit, leather folio under his arm. Travis froze. Dad, he said, his voice tight. What are you doing here? I smiled. Welcoming you home. His eyes narrowed, flicking toward Benjamin. Who's this? My lawyer, I said. And he's got something for you. Benjamin stepped forward and extended the sealed envelope. Mr. Travis Bennett, this is a copy of your father's revised last will and testament, executed on the 30th of June, 2025. Travis took it like it was on fire. You can't be serious, he said. Oh, I replied, my voice calm. I've never been more serious in my life. Travis didn't open the envelope right away. He just stared at it like it might explode in his hands. His face was still flushed from the long flight, but the color drained rapidly as the weight of what was happening began to sink in. What is this? He asked, though the label was clear and the name printed on the front was unmistakably his. Linda stepped closer, peering over his shoulder, her brow furrowing. Is this about the estate? She said, barely above a whisper. I could see the gears turning in her mind, her fingers tightening around her carry-on strap. Go ahead, I said evenly. Open it. Travis tore the seal with jerky fingers. His eyes scanned the first page quickly, then more slowly as he reached the section with the language we'd carefully crafted, intentional disinheritance of Travis Bennett due to long-term financial exploitation and recent threatening behavior against the testator. Linda's hand shot to her mouth. Oh my God, she muttered. Travis's face contorted from confusion to disbelief, and finally to fury. You can't be serious, he snapped, his voice rising. You're disinheriting me. I'm holding you accountable, I replied. There's a difference. His mouth opened, then closed. The words weren't coming fast enough to match his emotions. Finally, he stammered, "This is insane. You're throwing away your own son because of one mistake?" "One mistake?" I echoed. "You stood 10 feet from me in an airport and told me to go home after I paid for your entire vacation. That wasn't a mistake. That was a plan." He looked around, flustered, as though the other travelers milling about the terminal might come to his defense. But no one was paying attention. Benjamin stepped in, his voice calm and professional. "Mr. Bennett, I assure you the legal documentation is sound. The new will was executed in full compliance with Oregon state law, including video evidence of your father's mental capacity, 2 impartial witnesses, and a full notarization. Any attempt to contest the will would likely result in significant legal fees and very little gain." Travis turned back to me, eyes blazing. "How could you do this?" "We're family. You should have remembered that when you left me standing at gate 11 like an unwanted coat," I said. "You thought I'd just go home and say nothing. You thought I'd chalk it up to old age and bad memory. But you underestimated me." "This affects more than just me," he said, trying a new tactic. "What about Liam? What about Ella? You're punishing them too." "No," I said, my tone unwavering. "I'm protecting them. From growing up thinking they can treat people like disposable assets. From becoming like you." Linda's voice finally cut in, tight and sharp. "This is completely disproportionate, so you were excluded from a trip." "A trip I paid for," I interrupted. "With $18,000 I gave freely, in good faith. Not for a private getaway that didn't include me." She looked ready to argue further, but Benjamin raised a hand. "Mrs. Bennett, the decision is final. Mr. Bennett's estate has been reassigned to charitable organizations, including youth education funds and senior services. Detailed copies of the provisions are included in the envelope. Your children may not inherit a trust, but others in need will benefit." Travis's jaw clenched. He folded the papers and shoved them back into the envelope, then looked at me like he didn't recognize the man standing in front of him. "You'll regret this," he said quietly. "Maybe not now, but one day when you're alone, you'll regret cutting off your family." I met his stare with something he wasn't prepared for. Peace. "Travis," I said gently, "I was alone the second you decided my money mattered more than my presence. That moment at the airport, that was the cutting off. Today is just the paperwork." He didn't have a comeback for that. Behind him, Liam and Ella stood watching, too far to hear, but close enough to feel the tension. I looked past Travis and gave them a small smile. Ella waved back, uncertain but instinctively kind. That part still hurt, I won't lie. They were innocent, but so was I. And if no one taught them what consequences look like, they'd grow up believing there weren't any. Benjamin closed his folio, the final signal that our business was concluded. "If you have any legal inquiries, my office is listed on the back of the envelope," he said. "We'll respond to your attorney directly." And with that, we turned and walked toward the exit, leaving Travis standing there, holding his unraveling legacy like a sandcastle collapsing under the tide. We didn't speak until we were outside in the quiet evening air. Benjamin turned to me as we waited for the valet. "That went smoothly." "Better than expected," I said. "You think he'll try to fight it?" "Maybe. But every page of that envelope reminds him what happens when you try to cash in on someone else's love." The car arrived, and as I slid into the back seat, I glanced one last time through the glass doors. Travis was still standing there, staring down at the document that made one thing perfectly clear. The days of taking me for granted were over. The drive home was quiet, no traffic, no radio. Just the low hum of the tires and the occasional tap of Benjamin's fingers against his folio, like a slow metronome. I stared out the window as the city shifted past Portland's skyline, melting into the familiar curves of my neighborhood, each street lamp flickering on like clockwork. Somewhere out there, Travis was still standing in that terminal, clutching a manila envelope that told him in no uncertain terms that he no longer held the keys to my legacy. And somewhere even deeper than that, he was realizing for the first time in his adult life that actions, real actions, have real consequences. Benjamin pulled up in front of my house, the porch light casting a warm halo over the walkway. We didn't say much as I stepped out and shook his hand. "You did the hard part," he said. "I just put it on paper." "Thanks for being there today," I replied. It mattered. His nod was simple, respectful, and then he drove off, taillights vanishing into the dark. Inside, everything was just as I'd left it. The kitchen smelled faintly of lemon polish and old wood. The clock above the sink ticked in even rhythm. And in the living room, Martha's reading chair waited by the window, a soft indentation in the cushion like a memory etched into fabric. I changed into my soft flannel robe and made a cup of tea. No phone buzzing. No messages. No chaos. Just the quiet dignity of a house that still respected me, even if some people no longer did. I settled into the chair and glanced across the room at the bookshelf, where family photo frames sat like little monuments. Travis's graduation photo, our Christmas trip to Bend, Liam's first birthday party. I looked at them all, not with bitterness, but with a kind of mournful acceptance. They were still family. But the era of funding their lives while being excluded from them, that was over. Tomorrow, I'd call the Maui Youth STEM Fund and Oregon State University to notify them formally. I'd schedule appointments with the charities I'd chosen, people who'd never met me, but would value my contribution more than my own son had. People who understood that a gift was something to honor, not exploit. The rest of my week would be filled with updates to bank accounts, beneficiary forms, retirement rollovers, tasks I once thought I'd do with Travis beside me, pen in hand, smiling like the grateful son he used to pretend to be. But now, I saw things clearly. The man who had walked into that airport 3 weeks ago was hopeful, naive, and let's be honest, a little too forgiving. The man who now sipped tea in this quiet house was something else entirely. Not angry, not vindictive, just done. My phone was still off, and it would stay that way. Whatever panicked voicemails or half-hearted apologies Travis had left in the wake of Benjamin's visit, I didn't need to hear them. Because the truth is, some lessons don't need to be taught. They need to be lived. And Travis? Well, he was about to get a masterclass. The next morning, I woke just before sunrise. The sky outside my bedroom window was streaked with pale orange, and the house felt still rested, like it too had exhaled. For the first time in weeks, I hadn't dreamt of ocean views or family dinners under palm trees. I hadn't replayed the moment Travis told me to go home. I hadn't even thought of them. I simply slept, deeply, fully, like a man who'd finally put something heavy down. I made coffee slowly, not rushing for once. I stood by the kitchen window as it brewed, watching a hummingbird dart between the lavender and the rosemary bush Martha planted 15 years ago. The garden had always been her pride, and I'd kept it going quietly, methodically, like a conversation we never stopped having. I poured a mug and took it into the living room, settling into the same chair I always had. My phone sat on the end table, still turned off. I wasn't ready to let it back into my life just yet. Not because I feared what Travis might have said, but because I already knew what he wouldn't. An apology. Not a real one. Not the kind that comes from the soul, scraped clean of entitlement and spin. And anything less wasn't worth hearing. Instead, I opened the drawer beneath the table and pulled out a worn leather folder. Inside were documents I hadn't looked at in years, letters from Martha, clippings from my engineering days, old sketches of bridge designs I'd once obsessed over. One of them caught my eye. A blueprint I'd drawn in 1983 for a suspension bridge outside Salem. I remembered every detail, every calculation, every sleepless night spent ensuring the tension load would hold, even in a 100-year storm. And suddenly, it struck me. That's what this whole thing had been. Not a betrayal, a structural failure, one I should have seen coming. I'd spent decades building the foundation of our family, quietly supporting, absorbing the strain, holding weight that no one else could see. But somewhere along the line, the balance shifted. The load became one-sided. And finally, the cables snapped. Not with an explosion, with silence, with a ticket that was never bought, with a goodbye that wasn't spoken. I folded the blueprint and put it away, the symbolism too obvious to ignore. That afternoon I made the calls. The Maui Youth STEM Fund answered on the second ring. The director, a woman named Celeste, listened as I explained who I was, what I wanted to do, and why. I didn't give her the whole story, just the parts that mattered. I want to fund summer tech camps, I told her, for kids who might not otherwise afford them. Robotics, coding, applied engineering, real hands-on work. Her voice cracked just slightly when she replied, "We've never had a donor ask for that specifically. Most people just want their names on a plaque." "I don't need a plaque," I said. "I just want those kids to build something and feel proud." She promised to send over the necessary paperwork. Oregon State was next. The development office connected me with the head of the engineering department, a man named Dr. Whitaker who remembered one of my early projects from the 90 seconds. "We're working on expanding our scholarship offerings," he told me. "We've got bright minds applying, but not all of them have the resources to stay." "Use it for the ones no one sees," I said. "The quiet ones. The ones who don't ask but always show up prepared." "That sounds like someone I know," he replied. "That sounds like you." By evening, everything was in motion. Real motion. Not the illusion of connection I'd kept alive for years with money and guilt and misplaced optimism. This was purposeful, directed, and for once mine. After dinner, scrambled eggs and toast, just the way I liked, I returned to my chair, turned the phone back on, and waited, not for a call, not for an apology, just for the clarity that comes after a storm. And it came, not in words, but in the stillness of my house, in the whisper of the wind through the trees, in the way the sunset filtered through the blinds and painted my walls gold. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was finally absolutely, unmistakably free. 2 weeks passed. Quiet, steady, uneventful, at least on the surface. I spent my mornings walking the same looping path through the neighborhood that Martha and I used to take, past trimmed hedges and mailboxes she once remembered by house number. I read more, cooked more, learned how to make real sourdough starter and failed 3 times before getting it right. The phone stayed quiet, and I let it. Not because I was avoiding anything, but because I was finally gloriously unavailable to guilt. During that time, I didn't hear from Travis. Not directly, anyway. A cousin left a vague voicemail, something about a misunderstanding and how family should talk. A neighbor said she ran into Linda at the grocery store and heard the word "will" whispered through gritted teeth. But none of it mattered. The documents were filed. The beneficiaries confirmed. The investments restructured. What had once been a vague wish, a private fantasy of justice, was now irrevocable reality. Travis could scream, threaten, throw every tantrum he wanted. It wouldn't change a single decimal point. He was out, and the world had kept spinning. The only thing left now was the part I knew was coming, the part that always arrives when people who live off others suddenly realize the gravy train has come to a screeching halt. Confrontation. It came on a Thursday. I was trimming the hedges out front, clippers in hand, sun warming the back of my neck, when I heard a car pull up sharply behind me. The engine didn't idle, it cut immediately, and the door slammed harder than it needed to. I didn't turn around. I waited, let him walk all the way up the path. "Dad," Travis said. Not a question, not a greeting, just a statement. I clipped one last branch before turning. He looked worse for wear. Hollow-eyed, shirt wrinkled, like a man who hadn't slept well in weeks. I set the clippers down gently. Travis. He held a manila folder, likely a copy of the will, probably dog, eared by now. His mouth opened like he'd prepared a speech, but the words came out raw. "I can't believe you actually did it." "You mean protected my own future?" I asked. "Yes, I did, thoroughly." "This isn't you," he said, shaking his head. "You're not this cold." "No," I agreed. "I used to be generous, supportive, forgiving, but you didn't leave that version of me any choice. You're punishing us over one trip." His voice cracked on the word. I gave him a long look. "You're still calling it one trip?" He stepped forward. "Look, Dad, I messed up, okay? I should have made sure you had a ticket. I should have planned better. But we were under stress. Linda was managing everything and—" "Travis," I said, cutting him off, "you booked that flight 6 weeks in advance. You entered 4 names. You paid with my money. And you never once thought to call and ask if I was packed. That wasn't stress. That was erasure." He looked like he might cry, but I didn't flinch. I'd already cried for him. Behind him, the car idled silently, Linda in the passenger seat, avoiding my gaze, sunglasses on. "What do you want, Travis?" I asked flatly. "You here to fight for something you lost or finally acknowledge how you lost it?" "I want my father back," he said quietly. "Not this," lawyered up version. "Then you should have treated him like a father, not an ATM." He winced like I'd hit him. "And the kids?" he asked. "They're innocent. You're cutting them out too." "No," I replied. "They're getting something better than a check. I've funded scholarships, programs, and resources in their name, opportunities for children like them to build their own futures, not wait for handouts their father expected to inherit." He opened the folder and held it out like it might change my mind. "This doesn't have to be final. I didn't take it. It already island." He stared at me for a long time, waiting for a softening, a flicker of old warmth. But there was none. That version of me was gone, buried quietly at gate 11 when he told me to just go home. "You've made your point," he said finally, loud and clear. "No," I said softly. "I've made my boundary. Whether you ever hear the point is up to you." He turned and walked back to the car, folder still in hand, dignity unraveling like thread. I watched him go, not with anger, but with the calm of a man who finally understood the architecture of his own worth. Some bridges are worth rebuilding. Others, once burned, illuminate the road forward better than any map. It rained that night, a soft, steady drizzle that tapped against the windows like a lullaby. I sat in the living room with the lights dimmed low, a blanket over my knees, and a book I never got around to reading open in my lap. But I wasn't reading. I was listening. Listening to the rain, to the rhythm of quiet that filled the house, now that the voices of guilt and obligation had finally gone silent. I thought I'd feel lonelier, truth be told. That cutting ties, even toxic ones, would leave a hollow echo. But what I felt instead was space. Honest, peaceful space. And I had filled it with purpose. In the last few days, the scholarship paperwork had been finalized. The Maui STEM Fund had sent me a letter, handwritten. Imagine that, thanking me for believing in children I'd never meet. Oregon State had emailed a draft of the scholarship announcement, complete with Martha's name at the top. The Martha Bennett Memorial Engineering Grant, available each year to a student who shows promise, integrity, and quiet perseverance. The kind of student who reminded them of the donor. I'd stared at that line for a long time. Quiet perseverance. That was me once. That's who I'd always been, underneath the checkbooks and family dinners and birthday checks folded into cards. And now, even if Travis never saw it, my legacy would finally reflect that. Not the man who gave endlessly to people who took advantage, but the man who built something lasting, something meaningful. The next morning, I walked into town. The air was damp, but the sun was beginning to break through the clouds. I passed neighbors on their porches, familiar faces offering familiar waves. No one asked about Travis. No one needed to. Small towns have a way of sensing fault lines without needing to step on them. I stopped at the local cafe, ordered my usual black coffee, one cinnamon roll, and sat near the window, watching the street slowly come alive. I could have gone my whole life without drawing a hard line. I would have kept giving, kept hoping, kept twisting myself into the shape my family found most convenient. But then that morning at the airport happened, and I realized they weren't just leaving me behind. They'd already erased me. Travis hadn't even hesitated. No panic, no regret, just a smooth, practiced explanation and a suggestion that I head home. Like I was luggage that didn't fit in the trunk. That image stayed with me. It had become the moment I returned to, not in bitterness, but as a compass, a point of no return that redirected everything. After breakfast, I visited the local bank. Saturday down with Susan, the branch manager, and went over the changes to my accounts. She knew who Travis was. She'd watched me deposit checks into his mortgage account more than once. But she didn't say a word, just helped me reroute the remaining automatic transfers into a charitable trust I'd set up with Benjamin. "You sure you want everything redirected?" she asked, her voice gentle but clear. "Yes," I replied. "It's time the money started helping people who appreciate it." She nodded and didn't ask again. I walked home slowly, hands in my coat pockets, savoring the weight of decisions made and the relief of nothing left unsaid. The porch light clicked on automatically as I reached the steps. I paused for a moment, looking at the front door, the same door Travis had once barged through with a backpack full of laundry and a sheepish grin, asking if I had any extra detergent. And years later, the same door he walked past on holidays with a bottle of cheap wine and a plan to borrow money for a short-term investment. Always taking, always smiling, and always assuming I'd say yes. But I'd finally said no, not out of spite, out of self-respect. That night I wrote letters, one to Celeste at the STEM Fund, one to Dr. Whitaker at OSU, and one to a senior center I'd quietly supported in memory of Martha. I told them the truth, not the soap opera version, but the core of it. That legacy is more than inheritance. It's what you choose to build when others try to take. It's what you leave behind, not in bloodlines, but in impact. I folded each letter carefully, placed them in envelopes, and lined them up on the desk like a final row of dominoes. Then I turned off the light, walked down the hallway to my bedroom, and slept with the windows open, the air clean and cool against my skin. Somewhere I imagined Travis sitting at his kitchen table, still trying to figure out where it all went wrong. But I knew, and now, so did he. The final call came on a Sunday afternoon. I was out in the garden, kneeling by the rose bushes, trimming back a few stubborn shoots that had grown wild while I'd been too preoccupied to care. The sun was warm on my shoulders, the soil damp and rich beneath my gloves. I had just finished staking a young rose bush, Martha's favorite, a deep orange variety we planted the year after we moved in, when I heard the phone ring from inside the house. I let it ring twice, maybe 3 times, before walking in, unhurried, wiping my hands on a towel by the back door. Caller ID, Travis. I stood there for a moment, thumb hovering over the answer button, and then I pressed it. Hello? His voice came through, strained, quiet, like someone rehearsing honesty but not quite ready to wear it. Dad, he said. I didn't respond right away. The silence stretched just long enough for him to feel it. I just wanted to say, I read the letters. From the charities. I saw what you've done. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. They're good people, I said. They'll do more with it than we ever could with another vacation. He cleared his throat. I know you don't owe me anything. I know that now. And I was wrong. About a lot. Still, I waited. I wasn't going to rescue him from the discomfort of accountability. He continued, slower now. When I told you to go home, that was cruel. I justified it in my head at the time. Told myself we'd explain later, that you'd understand. But the truth is, I didn't think about what it would feel like. I didn't think about you at all. That part you had all hung in the air like smoke. I let it settle. Thank you for saying that, I said. But Travis, I need you to understand something. An apology doesn't rewind the clock. It doesn't undo the pattern. What you did wasn't a one-time lapse. It was the final line in a story that's been writing itself for 20 years. He exhaled audibly. I know, and I accept what you've done with the will. I don't like it, but I get it. For the first time in a long time, he sounded less like a son trying to negotiate, and more like a man realizing he'd reached the end of something. I'm not angry, I said. Not anymore. But I've learned I need peace more than reconciliation. If there's going to be a future between us, it has to be different. Honest. Equal. He didn't argue. Maybe because deep down he knew he'd been given more than he deserved for years. Can we start again? He asked finally. I don't expect anything. I miss my father. I looked out the window at the rose bush swaying gently in the breeze. Then show up, I said. Not for money, not for help. Just show up. Be a son, be a father. That's the only door left. A long pause. I will, he said, I promise. We didn't say goodbye. We just let the call end naturally, like a conversation that might continue another day. And maybe it would, or maybe not. But either way, I stepped back into my garden with the knowledge that this time, whatever grew next, grew on my terms. If this story moved you even just a little, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell so you never miss another powerful story like this one. We share true-to-life tales that explore family, boundaries, redemption, and what it really means to take back your power when others try to take advantage of your kindness. Every week we bring you emotional narratives with real stakes, real consequences, and real lessons that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. By subscribing, you're not just supporting the channel. You're joining a growing community of people who believe in accountability, dignity, and the right to draw the line when enough is enough. And we want to hear from you. What would you have done in Harold's shoes? Have you ever had to stand up to someone you love? Let us know in the comments below. Your voice might be the encouragement someone else needs to reclaim their own peace. So again, hit that subscribe button, share this video with someone who needs it, and stick around. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We tell truths one voice, one lesson, one powerful ending at a time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.